Here we are at the 18th session of the Commission on Sustainable Development, and we are very fortunate to have the opportunity to speak to Professor Tim Jackson, who is a Professor of Sustainable Development in the Centre for Environmental Strategies at the University of Surrey in the UK. And we are here to talk about his controversial and insightful book, Prosperity Without Growth. Professor Jackson, thank you so much for being with us today. Well, Professor Tim, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here with us.
Pleasure.
We've prepared a number of questions that we'd like to ask you and really try and get some of your insights into the issues of sustainable development.
Sure.
Now, here at the Commission on Sustainable Development, one of the themes under discussion is sustainable consumption and production. So, can you imagine a tipping point that could accelerate the transition to sustainable consumption and production, and what might bring it about?
Well, I guess all kinds of things could bring it about. Some of them would be quite nasty things, and presumably those are the ones that we want to avoid, like complete collapse of the economy, something that happened a year or so ago, but worse, or like severe resource crunches, running out of resources, or possibly something devastating in relation to climate change. So all of those things could actually be tipping points in one way or another, but I think the kind of name of the game really is to try and get to a place where we're consuming sustainably, where we're within planetary boundaries, without that kind of potentially devastating disruption. So I guess what would that take? It would take leadership. So a charismatic leader emerges out of nowhere, not out of nowhere, there are lots of candidates, and makes this a serious agenda. That there is a groundswell of change from concerned people who have a genuine concern about the environment and about the future of the planet, and or that there is some sort of global initiative, perhaps through the UN, who knows, that makes this a serious agenda.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned was the idea of charismatic leadership, which I think is very easy to relate to political will. And we know that among the challenges of transitioning to sustainable consumption and production, this question of political will is actually quite central. So how do we create the necessary political will required to bring about change?
That's a really interesting question, because I'm not sure that we do create it in a sort of straightforward engineering sense. I think it's a very difficult thing to engineer, actually. I think political will has to emerge, or it has to be nurtured, or it has to come about really through our own commitments in whichever way we work, whether it's in the UN, or it's in national government, or it's in local community. That's the only way I know about. I mean, I'm not sure how to manufacture political will. All I can really say, I suppose, is that the process of supporting and believing in change at the individual level, in whatever way you engage in it, is the only direction to go. And of course, there's an element of hopefulness there. You have to have some element of hope that political will emerge from that. But again, that's it builds, I think, from creating a better awareness of these issues, creating and working for political structures and institutions that reflect that awareness, and then supporting those potential candidates for leadership in the tasks that they take on.
Absolutely. Now, in your book, a fascinating book, might I add, you wrote, "But what about a world in which 9 billion people all aspire to the level of affluence achieved in the OECD nations? Such an economy would need to be 15 times the size of this one by 2015, and 40 times bigger by the end of the century." It sounds fairly grim. Could you maybe give in broad brushstrokes an idea of the kind of future that you would envision for humanity, and how it would be possible to satisfy the needs and aspirations of everyone without treading so heavily on our ecosystems?
Well, first you've got to ask what human needs are, what it means for people to flourish, and it's pretty clear that you do have to at least provide people with a decent standard of food, clothing, shelter, and those things matter, not just actually from point of view of survival, but also from the point of view of security. And when huge numbers of people are without them, and only a few have them in abundance, it creates, apart from all the ethical injustice of that situation, it creates an unequal, unstable, insecure world. So the basis has to be a distribution of those basic rights to food, clothing, shelter, water. And it's also clear, though, that we go, particularly in the most affluent nations, way beyond that. That what we call our needs flows vastly beyond those mere subsistence needs into all kinds of materialistic aspirations. And it's clear, too, that those materialistic aspirations are important in social terms. What we're doing with material goods is we're trying to create a social world and find our place in it, find a credible place in it. And that is an important task to do. It's just that we've been going about it the wrong way. We've been going about it through a consumer society that believes, perversely quite often, that we can deliver that social goal, that being in a social world and finding our place in it, by consuming more and more, by using consumer goods to signal how important we are, how much we love our friends, how much we are a part of the community, and that is what we have to find some sort of substitute for. What we have to find is a world in which it's possible for people to live, yes, but also to participate, to flourish, to live well, to have a sense of being in a community, and also to maintain some sense of purpose in their lives. So that means what? It means less resource use, it means stronger community, it means greater participation, it means protecting social relations between people and allowing people a sense of having a meaningful life.
It's very interesting, and I think that what you've just mentioned, those exact notions of change and changing the ideologies that we have at the moment, are very contradictory to the norms that we have in society right now and the structures of the international community as such. So what would you propose would be a source of motivation to inspire that change? How do we go about bringing that change?
I think that motivation is already there. It's latent, potentially. I think actually when you ask people what they care about their families, they care about the people they love, they care about having strong relationships with the community, they care about trust, they care about their ability to think of their lives in meaningful ways, and sometimes to pursue that meaningful relationship through their own pursuits, or through religious activities, or through engagement in philosophical inquiry, or whatever it is. That's already there. That latent desire is already there. Now, so your question is pertinent. You ask, well, why, if that's latent desire is there, why don't we have it? Why don't we see that potential? And I think there are two, important reasons. One is that there are clearly appetites within the human soul that don't express themselves entirely in that way, that actually do have an element of selfish, acquisitive materialism associated with them. But perhaps more importantly, I think what has happened is that that's been a really useful commodity, that materialism, that individualism, that acquisitiveness, because those kinds of people, that aspect of humanity, is exactly what you need to keep a consumer economy going. Consumers are exactly the right people. They're the people that we need to keep a consumer economy going. So, in other words, perversely, we've created exactly the people we need to keep a system going, which is no longer actually applying itself to the task of delivering those latent needs. It's at odds actually with what it means to be truly human. And that's where there is, not only a sort of sense of, oh my God, that's perverse that we have achieved that, but also that is the avenue for change. That's exactly how we can tease apart that material acquisitive bit of humanity and say that is not the whole of what it means to be a human being.